Can you understand why using the SPR as the Strategic Midterm Reserve is a short-sighted decision that only leaves this country even more exposed to the whims of OPEC Plus next year?
No, look, I disagree. We said that the OPEC decision was short-sighted precisely because the lack of supply and reliable supply continues to be the dominant challenge globally in energy markets. The lack of supply continues to be the dominant risk. And the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in a historic but calibrated way starting last winter was designed to address that problem and to help have additional supply on the market during this transition and during a period where we knew Russian supply was coming off and U.S. producers were ramping up. That's why if you talk to most energy market analysts, they will point to the fact that that use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as a bridge as U.S. producers brought production back online, was one of the principal reasons that kept oil prices from moving up even more quickly over the course of the summer and into the fall. That's a prudent use of the asset as a transition as U.S. producers ramp up.
You say it's a prudent use of the asset. Other people are very worried about this. You've drained the SPR to its lowest level in 4 decades. There's some accusation that you're putting the polls before America's energy security. Brian, the Saudis themselves said this morning that the US requested a 1-month delay to the OPEC Plus output. I wonder why that would be. Brian, can you tell me whether you did ask the Saudis for a 1-month delay to that decision? Are they telling the truth?
Look, we clearly communicated our views to OPEC members that we thought it was short-sighted for them to take the action that they were contemplating, and they announced. With respect to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, this was a calibrated decision to address the real issues in the market. We talked to U.S. industry last winter. We identified that there was about a 1 million barrel a day gap between what they were producing this winter and what they said that they could get production to by late this fall. That 1 million barrel gap was what we calibrated to make the decision on the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And people should feel confident that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve continues to be an asset that we can deploy to address our economic and national security needs. That's always what has dictated the President's decision-making on this, and that's what will dictate his decision-making on this going forward.
Brian, you didn't answer the question, so I'm going to ask it again. I'm going to share with you and share with our audience the quote from the Saudis this morning. The government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to clarify that based on its belief in the importance of dialogue and exchange of views with its allies and partners outside of OPEC Plus regarding the situation in the oil markets, the government of the Kingdom clarified through its continuous consultation with the US administration that all economic analyses indicate that postponing the OPEC Plus decision for a month, according to what has been suggested, would have had negative economic consequences. Brian, again, it's a really straight question. Did you ask the Saudis to delay that decision for a month? Are they telling the truth or not?
Look, I'm not going to get on air and disclose private conversations that members of our administration
the Saudis have shared it with us. You've got the opportunity to say it's true or not. Is it true or not?
What I will say clearly is that the communications that we've had with OPEC members and continuing have been based on our assessment of the economic circumstances of supply and demand in global oil markets. We disagree with the assessment in that statement that it was economically the right or necessary or appropriate thing to do to reduce production at a time where the lack of global supply on the market continues to be the predominant challenge in global energy markets. That has been and continues to be the motivation behind all of our engagements internationally.
Again, they're suggesting it's a political one, that your strategy is political, that your effort to get energy prices is a 1-month story. I understand what they're suggesting, and what I'm saying to you is that our strategy, I understand what they are suggesting, and what I'm saying to you is that our strategy has always been grounded in an assessment of the economics of the situation and what is prudent for the global economy, for U.S. economy and U.S. families. So the way you would have some kind of viable energy policy from here is to make the decision as to whether what we're experiencing right now is a one-off shock or something more permanent, a one-off winter or something more permanent, a permanent shift away from Russian energy. Brian, which one is it?
We're in a transition where we face some very immediate challenges, but absolutely energy markets globally and in the United States are going to go through a transition. We're never going to go back to the pre-pandemic or the pre-Putin invasion paradigm on energy policy. And that's frankly why, even as we have worked to address very immediate term issues, including helping the Europeans increase their reserves of natural gas going into this winter to try to address those immediate challenges, we have been focused on long-term prudent energy policy policy and providing incentives for U.S. producers of cleaner sources of energy to produce at scale and at speed that they've never done so before, and to do so in lower cost ways here in the United States so that we can be a reliable supplier of clean, low-cost electricity to our industry, to our own consumers and families, and to the world. The United States, the Biden administration have focused on that. We prioritize that. And in fact, we have now legislated long-term incentives to drive exactly that kind of investment in the United States. And that's based on an understanding that we are going to continue to be in a historic energy transition, not just in the months ahead, but in the years ahead as well.
Brian, if this is not a one-off shock, if this is a permanent shift, can we complete the conversation by you telling me how it's a viable strategy, a sustainable approach to drain the SPR to a 4-decade low? If it's not about politics, why is that viable? Why is that strategy sustainable?
Appreciate the question. It's a mischaracterization of how we use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We announced a policy that was explicitly designed as a temporary bridge over the course of months, 180 million barrels, to bridge a temporary situation while U.S. producers were ramping up supply in the short term. Our long-term challenges around energy are about investing in increasing the supply of clean energy in the United States and globally at massive scale. Those require different policy tools, which is why we've enacted historic incentives, $370 billion in long-term incentives to increase investment in the United States. That's the right long-term policy solution. We can take short-term and temporary measures that are prudent and well-calibrated alongside long-term measures. That's what we've been doing.